You're my boyfriend now. Those four words came from a complete stranger in a glittering ballroom, spoken 2 seconds before 500 cameras turned in my direction. No warning, no explanation. Just a beautiful woman with desperate eyes gripping my arm like I was the last piece of driftwood before she drowned. Her ex-boyfriend, some tech billionaire in a suit worth more than my car, stood 10 feet away wearing the kind of smile that makes your skin crawl. And I had exactly 1 second to decide. Play along with whatever game this was, or let her sink. I should have walked away. But I didn't. That choice cost me everything I'd spent 7 years protecting. My daughter's privacy, my job, my quiet life. It also gave me something I'd stopped believing existed. This story isn't about falling in love with someone rich and famous. It's about what happens when two people running from completely different kinds of pain accidentally crash into each other and realize they've been hiding the same wounds all along. So stick with me until the end and drop a comment with your city name so I can see how far this story travels. The security office smelled like burnt coffee and industrial carpet cleaner. Ethan Cole sat hunched over a desk cluttered with incident reports, 2 empty energy drink cans, and a half-eaten sandwich Sophie had packed for him that morning. The bread was soggy. He ate it anyway. "Camera 3's out again," muttered Dennis, his coworker, squinting at the monitor wall. "Third time this month," Ethan grunted without looking up. "Submit the ticket. Facilities won't fix it, but submit it anyway." "You ever think about getting out of here?" Dennis asked, spinning in his chair. "Doing something that doesn't involve watching drunk people stumble through lobbies at 2 a.m.? Every single day." Ethan clicked through footage from the previous night. A wedding reception gone wrong, couple screaming in the elevator, bridesmaid throwing a shoe. Standard Saturday. "But this job has insurance, pays on time, lets me pick Sophie up from school most days." "Yeah, but you're 32, man. That's still young." Ethan finally glanced up. "You got kids, Dennis?" "Hell no." "Then you don't get it." He went back to the reports. "I'm not 32. I'm a single dad who's 32. There's a difference." Dennis opened his mouth to argue, then seemed to think better of it. The walkie on Ethan's belt crackled. "Cole, you copy?" Ethan thumbed the button. "Yeah, go ahead." "Need you upstairs, grand ballroom, some VIP situation." He checked his watch. 7:15. The charity gala wasn't supposed to start until 8, but rich people had their own concept of punctuality. "What kind of situation?" "The kind where someone important wants to complain to someone in a uniform. You're it." Ethan sighed, grabbed his jacket. "Copy. On my way." Dennis snorted. "Good luck. Try not to get fired for existing." He had. The elevator ride gave Ethan 60 seconds to straighten his tie and mentally prepare for whatever nonsense awaited him. Hotel security wasn't a glamorous job, but it was stable. After his wife died, stable became the only thing that mattered. Sophie needed routines, school supplies. A father who came home every night instead of chasing dreams that didn't pay rent. The ballroom floor was chaos dressed in expensive fabrics. Event staff rushed around adjusting flower arrangements the size of small cars. A woman in a headset barked orders at a crew hanging a banner that read, "Winter Hearts Charity Gala" in gold script. Ethan spotted his supervisor near the stage, talking to someone he couldn't see. "Cole!" His supervisor waved him over. "Got a guest who needs an escort removed. Apparently he's harassing one of the attendees." Ethan's stomach dropped. Harassment complaints were never simple. "Where's the guest?" "Over there." The supervisor nodded toward the bar area. That's when Ethan saw her. She stood near the champagne fountain in a dark green dress that probably cost more than his rent. Mid-20s, pale skin, black hair swept to one side, phone in hand. She wasn't looking at him. She wasn't looking at anything, really, just staring at her screen with the kind of blankness people wear when they're trying not to feel something. Next to her stood a man in a tailored navy suit, leaning too close, talking too loud. Even from 20 feet away, Ethan could read the body language. The guy wasn't taking no for an answer. "That's Marcus Chen," the supervisor muttered. "Tech CEO. Donated $500,000 to tonight's event, so we're walking a line here." "Who's the woman?" "Some influencer. Aria something. Apparently they used to date." Ethan frowned. "Used to? That's what makes it complicated." The supervisor clapped him on the shoulder. "Go be diplomatic, and for God's sake, don't make it worse." But Ethan approached slowly, hands visible, posture non-threatening. He'd done this 100 times, intervening in situations where people with money thought rules didn't apply. The trick was staying calm, speaking quietly, giving everyone an exit that didn't involve cops or headlines. "Excuse me," Ethan said evenly. "Is there a problem here?" Marcus Chen turned, annoyance flashing across his face. "Who the hell are you?" "Hotel security. I received a report about a disturbance." "There's no disturbance." Marcus gestured dismissively. "Just a private conversation." Ethan glanced at the woman, Arya. She still wasn't looking at either of them, but her jaw was tight, fingers clenched around her phone. "Ma'am," Ethan said gently, "are you okay?" That got her attention. Her eyes snapped up, sharp, dark, ringed with the kind of exhaustion makeup couldn't quite hide. For a second, she just stared at him like she was trying to figure out if he was real. "I'm fine," she said quietly. "She said she's fine," Marcus repeated, voice dripping condescension. "So why don't you go back to wherever they keep the security guys and let us finish talking?" Ethan ignored him, kept his focus on Arya. "If you need space, I can escort this gentleman to another area of the venue." "Escort?" Marcus laughed, sharp and ugly. "Do you know who I am?" "Yeah," Ethan said flatly. "You're the guy who's about to get escorted if you don't lower your voice." Marcus's smile vanished. "You threatening me?" "Nope, just doing my job." The air went tight. Marcus stepped closer, and Ethan didn't move, didn't blink. He'd grown up in neighborhoods where men like Marcus learned real quick that money couldn't buy intimidation. Then Arya spoke. "Actually," she said, voice louder now, "he's with me." Both men turned to look at her. "What?" Marcus said. Arya stepped forward, looped her arm through Ethan's, and smiled, bright, fake, absolutely terrifying in its precision. "This is my boyfriend, Ethan." Ethan's brain short-circuited. "Boyfriend?" "You're joking," Marcus said. "Do I look like I'm joking?" Arya's grip on Ethan's arm tightened. She was trembling slightly, but her voice stayed steady. "We've been seeing each other for 3 months. I just didn't want to announce it publicly because, well, you know how people are." Marcus stared at her, then at Ethan, then back at her. "You're dating security?" "His name is Ethan," Arya said coldly. "And yes." "Problem?" Ethan felt like he'd been dropped into someone else's life. He had no idea what was happening, but the desperation in Arya's eyes told him everything he needed to know. She needed an exit. He was it. "No problem," Ethan heard himself say. "Just making sure my girlfriend's okay." Marcus's face went red. "This is insane. You're lying." Arya leaned into Ethan, tilted her head up at him. "Baby, can we go? I don't want to deal with this right now." It was the word baby that almost broke him. She said it like she'd said it 1,000 times, like it was the most natural thing in the world. And maybe it was the shock, or maybe it was the way Marcus looked at her like she was property he'd misplaced, but Ethan played along. "Yeah," he said. "Let's go." They turned and walked away, Arya still holding his arm, her heels clicking against marble. Ethan could feel Marcus's glare burning into his back. He didn't look back. They made it to the hallway before Arya let go and slumped against the wall, breathing hard. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know what else to do." Ethan stood there, hands in his pockets, trying to process what just happened. "You want to tell me what that was about?" She looked up at him, eyes glassy. "He won't leave me alone. We broke up 4 months ago, and he still shows up everywhere I go, calls me, texts me, sends gifts to my apartment. Tonight he cornered me and said if I didn't give him another chance, he'd make sure no one in this industry ever worked with me again." "That's harassment," Ethan said. "You should file a report." Arya laughed bitterly. "With who?" "He donates millions to politicians, sits on charity boards. No one's going to believe me over him." Ethan didn't argue. He'd seen enough of the world to know she was probably right. "So you told him I was your boyfriend," he said. "I panicked." She wiped her eyes, smudging mascara. "I just needed him to stop. And you were standing there looking all capable. Capable. You know what I mean?" She straightened, composing herself with visible effort. "Look, I'll fix this. I'll post something online saying it was a misunderstanding. You won't get dragged into my mess." Little late for that, Ethan muttered. Arya winced. I really am sorry. He studied her, the expensive dress, the perfect hair, the cracks showing underneath. She reminded him of the porcelain doll Sophie used to carry everywhere before it shattered on the kitchen floor. Beautiful and fragile and trying so hard not to break. Forget it, Ethan said. Just stay away from that guy. He's bad news. I know. Arya pushed off the wall, smoothing her dress. Thank you for playing along. She started to leave, then paused. What's your last name? She asked. Cole, why? In case someone asks. She smiled faintly. Ethan Cole. Got it. Then she walked back toward the ballroom, leaving Ethan alone in the hallway, wondering what the hell he'd just gotten himself into. Awesome. The gala started an hour later. Ethan returned to his post near the service entrance, monitoring the crowd through the security cameras. He told himself to forget about Arya, forget about Marcus Chen, forget the whole weird interaction. It was over. Done. Except it wasn't. At 9:30, his phone buzzed, a text from Dennis with a screenshot of Instagram. Dude, is this you? The photo showed Arya and Ethan in the hallway, her arm linked through his, both of them looking at each other. The caption read, Finally ready to share this. Meet Ethan, my favorite person. Ethan's blood went cold. Oh no! His phone exploded. Text after text after text. Dennis, his supervisor. A number he didn't recognize. Another screenshot. A gossip site with the headline, Arya Vale goes public with new mystery man. Another buzz. This one from a number he did recognize. Sophie's school emergency contact. Hi, Mr. Cole. This is Principal Martinez. Can you call me when you get a chance? Some reporters showed up asking about you, and I wanted to give you a heads up. Ethan stared at the message, hands shaking. Reporters. At Sophie's school. He dialed Arya's number, saved from the staff contact sheet earlier. It rang twice. Hello? What did you do? Ethan's voice came out strangled. Silence. I can explain. Reporters showed up at my daughter's school. My daughter's school, Arya. More silence. Then quietly, I didn't think anyone would care that much. You're a public figure. Of course people care. He was pacing now, ignoring the looks from passing staff. You said you'd fix this. You said, I know what I said. Her voice cracked. I'm sorry. I'll delete it right now. It's too late. It's already everywhere. He stopped pacing, pressed his palm against his forehead. I have a 7-year-old daughter who doesn't understand why strangers are showing up at her school asking about her dad. Do you get that? Do you understand what you just did? I'm sorry, Arya whispered. I'm so sorry. Ethan closed his eyes, breathed, forced himself to think past the panic. We need to meet, he said finally. Tomorrow. Somewhere private. And you're going to explain exactly how we're going to undo this. Okay, yeah. Tomorrow. She sounded small, broken. Ethan, I really didn't mean… Tomorrow, he repeated, and hung up. He stood there in the service hallway, surrounded by the distant sound of music and laughter, and tried to figure out how his life had gone from boring and predictable to completely sideways in less than 3 hours. His phone buzzed again. Another screenshot. Another headline. Who is Ethan Cole? Everything we know about Arya Vale's new boyfriend. Ethan put his phone in his pocket, went back to work, and prayed Sophie wouldn't see any of this before he could explain. Sophie was asleep when Ethan got home at 2 a.m. He stood in her doorway for a long time, watching her breathe, her stuffed rabbit tucked under one arm. She looked so small, so safe in her little world of school projects and cartoons and bedtime stories. He'd spent 7 years building that world, making sure she never felt the chaos that came after her mom died. And now some stranger had cracked it open in one night because she needed a human shield against her ex-boyfriend. Ethan pulled Sophie's door shut quietly, went to the kitchen, and sat at the table in the dark. His phone was still blowing up. He turned it off. Tomorrow, he'd deal with Arya. Tomorrow, he'd figure out how to protect Sophie from whatever fallout was coming. Tomorrow, he'd decide whether to be furious or just resign to the fact that his life no longer belonged to him. Tonight, he just sat in the dark and wished he'd walked away when he had the chance. Black. The coffee shop Arya picked was in a neighborhood Ethan didn't recognize, One of those places with exposed brick and overpriced pastries where everyone looked like they were pretending to write a screenplay. He showed up 10 minutes early, ordered black coffee, and sat in the back corner trying not to check his phone every 30 seconds. Arya arrived exactly on time, wearing oversized sunglasses and a hoodie that probably cost more than his monthly grocery bill. She spotted him, hesitated, then walked over and sat down without a word. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "I deleted the post," Arya said finally. "Last night, right after we talked." "Doesn't matter." Ethan slid his phone across the table. The screen showed a dozen articles, each with the same photo of them in the hallway. "It's everywhere now, you can't delete the internet." Arya pulled off her sunglasses. Her eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted. "I know. I'm trying to fix it." "How?" "My manager's drafting a statement. We're going to say it was a misunderstanding, that you're just a friend who helped me out of an uncomfortable situation." Ethan laughed, sharp and humorless. "A friend! Right. That'll definitely make it better when my daughter's classmates start asking why her dad's all over gossip sites." "What do you want me to do?" Arya's voice rose slightly. "I can't go back and undo it. I made a mistake. I'm trying to fix it." "You don't get it." Ethan leaned forward. "This isn't just about me. Sophie's 7 years old. She doesn't need cameras or reporters or people at her school asking questions. She needs normal, boring, safe." "I understand." "No, you don't." He wasn't yelling, but his voice was hard. "You live in a world where this stuff is normal. I don't. I work 60-hour weeks so my kid can have a decent life, and you just blew that up because you were too scared to deal with your ex like an adult." Arya flinched. "You're right. I was scared. Marcus has ruined people before. I panicked, and I shouldn't have dragged you into it." She paused. "But you didn't have to play along. You could have walked away." That stopped him. She wasn't wrong. He'd made a choice too. Standing there in that ballroom, he could have told her no, called his supervisor, let someone else handle it. But he hadn't. Something in her desperation had overridden every logical thought in his head. "Yeah," Ethan said quietly. "I could have." They sat in silence, the hiss of the espresso machine filling the space between them. "I'll pay you," Arya said suddenly. Ethan looked up. "What?" "For the trouble, the stress, whatever you need to make this right. I'll pay you." "I don't want your money." "Then what do you want?" Ethan stared at her, trying to figure out if she was serious. "I want you to leave me and my daughter alone. Issue your statement. Move on. Let this die." Arya nodded slowly. "Okay, I can do that." "Good." He stood to leave. "Ethan?" He stopped, looked back. "I really am sorry," she said. "I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am." He didn't respond, just walked out of the coffee shop into the cold Chicago morning and tried to convince himself this was the end of it. Gutch. It wasn't. The statement Arya's team released made things worse. Social media decided the Just Friends explanation was a cover-up. Gossip sites started digging into Ethan's background. Someone found his Facebook page, barely used, mostly pictures of Sophie, and suddenly people were commenting on photos from 2 years ago. His supervisor called him into the office on Wednesday. "This isn't a formal reprimand," she said carefully, "but corporate's getting calls, reporters asking about our security staff. It's not great." Ethan sat across from her, numb. "I didn't do anything wrong." "I know, but perception matters, especially when it involves high-profile guests." She sighed. "Look, just keep your head down. Let this blow over, and maybe avoid any more situations involving celebrities." "Trust me," Ethan muttered. "That's the plan." Thursday afternoon, he picked Sophie up from school. She climbed into the back seat, backpack dragging, face scrunched. "Hey, kiddo," Ethan said. "How was your day?" "Weird." His stomach dropped. "Weird how?" "Emma said her mom saw you on the internet, with some lady." Sophie frowned. "Why were you on the internet, Daddy?" Ethan gripped the steering wheel. "It's complicated. Emma's mom said you have a girlfriend." "I don't." "Then why did she say that?" "Because people make mistakes sometimes, and the internet makes those mistakes bigger." Sophie was quiet for a moment. Then, "Do you want a girlfriend?" Ethan glanced at her in the rear-view mirror. Where's this coming from? I don't know. She picked at her backpack strap. You're always alone, except for me. You're all I need, Sophie. But what about when I'm at school? Ethan pulled into their apartment complex, parked, turned to face her. Listen to me. I'm happy. We're happy. Okay? Sophie nodded, but she didn't look convinced. That night, after she went to bed, Ethan sat on the couch and scrolled through the articles still circulating online. Most of them were harmless, speculation about who he was, where he worked, how he met Arya. But a few were uglier. Comments calling him a gold digger. Theories that he'd used his daughter to manipulate Arya into a relationship. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. This is Arya. Please don't block me. I need to talk to you. Ethan stared at the message, debating. Then, against every instinct screaming at him to delete it, he replied, What now? 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Marcus is threatening to sue me for defamation. He's claiming I made up the harassment story to ruin his reputation. His lawyers are going after anyone involved, including you. Ethan's chest tightened. How is that my problem? Because if this goes to court, they'll subpoena you. Drag you through depositions, put your life under a microscope. Jesus Christ, I'm sorry. I didn't think he'd escalate like this. Ethan stood, paced the living room, tried to think. He didn't have money for lawyers, didn't have time for court battles, didn't have anything except a 7-year-old daughter who needed stability. What do you want from me? He typed. Meet me tomorrow, please. I have an idea. Your last idea got me into this mess. I know, but this might get us both out. Ethan closed his eyes. Every rational part of his brain told him to block her number, ignore the lawsuit threat, deal with whatever came his way, but Sophie's question echoed in his head. You're always alone, Daddy. Not alone. Isolated. There was a difference. Where? He typed. My apartment. I'll send the address. 7 p.m.? Fine. He turned off his phone before he could change his mind. Seikan. Arya's apartment was nothing like Ethan expected. He'd pictured something cold and modern, glass and chrome, the kind of place that looked like a magazine spread. Instead, it was warm, cluttered even. Bookshelves stuffed with fashion magazines and novels, a blanket tangled on the couch, takeout containers on the kitchen counter. Sorry about the mess, Arya said, closing the door behind him. I wasn't expecting company. Ethan stayed near the entrance, arms crossed. What's this idea? Arya motioned to the couch. Sit, please. He didn't move. She sighed, leaned against the counter. Marcus's lawsuit only works if he can prove I lied about us, about you being my boyfriend. You did lie. I know, but what if we make it true? Ethan stared at her. You've lost your mind. Just listen. Arya stepped closer, hands raised like she was calming a spooked animal. We date, publicly, for a few months, long enough to prove the relationship was real. Then we break up quietly, go our separate ways, and Marcus has no case. Absolutely not. Ethan, no, I'm not fake dating you so you can win a legal battle with your psycho ex. It's not just about the lawsuit. Arya's voice wavered. If Marcus wins, he destroys my career, my reputation, everything I've built. And he'll go after you too, just to prove a point. Then fight him in court like a normal person. I can't win in court. He has unlimited resources and zero conscience. The only way I survive this is if the relationship looks real. Ethan shook his head. This is insane. I'll pay you, Arya said quickly. $50,000 up front for 3 months of pretending. That stopped him. 50,000, he repeated. Yes, enough to cover legal fees if he does come after you, enough to put away for Sophie's future, enough to give you options. Ethan's mind raced. $50,000, Sophie's college fund, a safety net, the ability to quit his job if corporate decided he was too much of a liability. This is a terrible idea, he said. Probably. Sophie can't know. She doesn't need more confusion in her life. We'll keep it low-key, just enough public appearances to make it believable. Ethan rubbed his face, exhausted. Why me? You could hire an actor, someone who actually knows how to do this. Arya smiled faintly. Because you're real. People can tell when something's fake, but you don't perform. You're just You. That's not a compliment. Yes, it is. They stood in silence, the weight of the decision pressing down on both of them. 3 months, Ethan said finally. Then we're done. No extensions, no drama. Arya nodded. 3 months. And you stay away from Sophie unless I say otherwise. Deal. Ethan extended his hand. Arya took it. Her grip was firm, her palm warm. This is going to blow up in our faces, Ethan said. Yeah, Arya agreed. Probably. But neither of them let go. The contract arrived 2 days later in a plain manila envelope slipped under Ethan's apartment door. He found it Saturday morning while Sophie was still asleep. 3 pages of legal language that boiled down to, pretend to date Arya Vale for 3 months, don't tell anyone it's fake, get paid $50,000. He read it twice in the kitchen table, coffee going cold in his mug. The money would hit his account within 24 hours of signing. No contingencies, no tricks, just his signature at the bottom and a promise to show up when needed. Ethan pulled out a pen, hesitated, then signed his name. He took a photo of the pages and texted it to the number Arya had given him. 3 dots appeared immediately. Thank you. I know this isn't easy. He didn't respond, just slid the contract back into the envelope and shoved it in a drawer before Sophie woke up, asking for pancakes. The money appeared in his account Monday morning. Ethan stared at the balance on his phone screen, refreshed it twice to make sure it was real, then sat on the edge of his bed trying to process the fact that he'd just sold 3 months of his life to a stranger. His phone buzzed. Arya again. Dinner tomorrow night? We should be seen together, somewhere public but not too crowded. Ethan typed back, Where? There's an Italian place in Lincoln Park, casual, good food. I'll make a reservation for 7. Fine. And Ethan, wear something nice, not a uniform. He almost laughed. Something nice, like he had a closet full of options. That evening, after putting Sophie to bed, Ethan stood in front of his pathetic excuse for a wardrobe and pulled out the one button-down shirt he owned that didn't have coffee stains. It was navy blue, slightly wrinkled, bought 3 years ago for a parent-teacher conference he'd forgotten about until the last minute. He paired it with jeans that weren't ripped and the least scuffed pair of shoes he could find. In the bathroom mirror, he looked like exactly what he was. A guy in his 30s trying too hard to look like he belonged somewhere he didn't. Perfect, he muttered. The restaurant Arya picked was the kind of place with cloth napkins and candles on every table. Ethan arrived 10 minutes early, gave his name to the hostess, and was led to a corner booth where Arya already sat scrolling through her phone. She looked up when he approached, and something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe? Or assessment. She wore a simple black sweater and jeans, hair loose around her shoulders, barely any makeup. If he'd passed her on the street, he wouldn't have recognized her as the same person from the gala. Hi, she said, setting her phone down. Hi. Ethan slid into the booth across from her, immediately regretting the shirt choice. Too formal. Or not formal enough. He couldn't tell anymore. You look nice, Arya offered. You're a terrible liar. She smiled faintly. I'm really not. That's kind of the problem. A waiter appeared, rattled off specials Ethan didn't process, and left them with menus the size of small posters. Ethan scanned the prices and felt his stomach drop. $30 pasta, $40 steaks. This was the kind of place where people didn't look at the right side of the menu. Order whatever you want, Arya said, like she'd read his mind. This is on me. You're already paying me $50,000. I can buy my own dinner. Ethan, just let me pay. I don't need charity. Arya set her menu down, leaned forward slightly. It's not charity. It's part of the deal. We're dating, remember? People will notice if you look uncomfortable the entire time. He wanted to argue, but she had a point, so he ordered something mid-priced and told himself it didn't matter. They made small talk while they waited for food. Safe, boring questions about work and weather, and nothing that meant anything. But halfway through her explanation of why Chicago winters were worse than people realized, Arya stopped mid-sentence and glanced toward the entrance. Don't look now, she said quietly. But there's a photographer outside. Ethan's shoulders tensed. How do you know? Because I've been doing this long enough to spot a telephoto lens. Great. Hey. Arya reached across the table, rested her hand on his. Her fingers were cold. This is what we signed up for. Just act normal. Normal, Ethan repeated. Right. But her hand stayed on his, and he didn't pull away. It felt strange, not bad, just foreign. He hadn't touched anyone like this since his wife died. Hadn't wanted to. And now here he was holding hands with a woman he barely knew while someone outside took pictures they'd both regret later. The food arrived, and Arya let go to pick up her fork. They ate in silence for a while, the tension easing into something almost comfortable. Ethan hadn't realized how hungry he was until the first bite of carbonara hit his tongue. So, Arya said eventually, tell me about Sophie. He looked up, immediately wary. Why? Because if we're going to convince people this is real, I should probably know basic things about your life. And she's a pretty big part of it. Fair point. Ethan set his fork down. She's 7, second grade, obsessed with dinosaurs and those books about magic tree houses. Hates broccoli, loves mac and cheese, but only the kind from the box, not homemade. Arya smiled. Sounds like a smart kid. She is. What happened to her mom, if you don't mind me asking? Ethan's jaw tightened. He minded. But this was the deal. Share enough to seem real without actually giving away anything that mattered. Car accident, he said. Sophie was 2. She doesn't really remember her. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was a long time ago. Arya studied him with an expression he couldn't read. You don't talk about it much, do you? Not if I can help it. She nodded, didn't push. Instead, she picked up her wine glass and took a slow sip. My turn, I guess. What do you want to know about me? Ethan considered. There were 1,000 questions he could ask. Why she stayed with Marcus for so long. Why she cared so much about strangers on the internet. Why she'd picked this life at all. But what came out was simpler. Why fashion? He asked. Arya blinked like she'd expected something else. It's the only thing I was ever good at. Started sketching designs when I was 12, taught myself to sew, posted some stuff online, and people actually liked it. She shrugged. Turned into a career before I realized what was happening. You make it sound accidental. It kind of was. I didn't plan on becoming an influencer. That just happened because I needed a way to fund the design work. And then the influencer thing got bigger than the designs, and suddenly I was trapped in this weird loop of performing for people who don't actually know me. So quit, Ethan said. Arya laughed, but there was no humor in it. It's not that simple. My entire life is tied to this. My income, my reputation, my future. If I walk away, I lose everything. Not everything. Close enough. They locked eyes across the table, and for a second Ethan saw something raw underneath all the polish. Exhaustion, maybe, or loneliness. The same kind he felt every night after Sophie went to bed, and the apartment got too quiet. The waiter returned with dessert menus. Arya waved him off, asked for the check instead. Outside, the temperature had dropped. Ethan's breath fogged in the air as they stood on the sidewalk, Arya scrolling through her phone while they waited for her car. The photo's already online, she said, turning the screen toward him. It showed them through the restaurant window, Arya's hand on his, both of them leaning in like they were sharing secrets. The caption read, Arya Vale and mystery boyfriend Ethan Cole spotted on romantic date night. Mystery boyfriend, Ethan muttered. That's me now. Could be worse, Arya said. They could have called you a gold digger. Give it time. A black car pulled up to the curb. Arya glanced at him, hesitant. You need a ride? I'm good. Train's 2 blocks away. Ethan, it's freezing. Just let me. I said I'm good. She didn't argue, just nodded, climbed into the back seat, and rolled down the window. Same time next week? Yeah, sure. The car pulled away, leaving Ethan alone on the sidewalk. He shoved his hands in his pockets and started walking, trying to ignore the feeling that he'd just crossed a line he couldn't uncross. The second date happened at a bookstore cafe in Wicker Park. Arya's idea again. Lower key, she said. More believable. They met on a Sunday afternoon, Sophie safely at a birthday party for one of her classmates. Ethan arrived first, ordered coffee he didn't want, and sat near the window pretending to read a paperback he'd grabbed off the discount rack. Arya showed up 15 minutes late, apologizing before she even sat down. Sorry, traffic was insane. It's fine. She ordered tea, pulled out a notebook, and started sketching something Ethan couldn't see from his angle. They didn't talk much. Didn't need to. The point was to be seen, not to actually connect. But an hour in, Arya closed her notebook and looked at him. "Can I ask you something?" she said. Ethan set his book down. "Depends on the question. Do you ever regret it? Becoming a single dad so young?" The question hit harder than it should have. "No," he said. "Not once. Not even a little? Sophie's the best thing that ever happened to me. I don't care what I gave up to raise her." Arya tilted her head. "What did you give up?" Ethan hesitated. No one ever asked him that, not directly. "Everything else," he said finally. "College, career options, friends who didn't understand why I couldn't go out anymore, any chance at a normal 20s. He paused. "But I'd do it again, without question." Arya was quiet for a moment, then, "You're a good dad." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do." Something in her voice made him look up. She wasn't smiling, wasn't performing, just watching him with an expression that felt uncomfortably close to admiration. "What about you?" Ethan asked, deflecting. "You ever think about kids?" Arya laughed. "I can barely take care of myself." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I've got." She picked up her tea, cradled the cup in both hands. "My life doesn't have room for that. Maybe it never will. You're 24, you've got time." "Time doesn't fix the fact that I don't know how to be a normal person. I've been performing so long, I forget what's real." Ethan didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded, and they sat in silence until Arya's phone buzzed with a reminder about some meeting she couldn't miss. They left the cafe together, walked half a block before she stopped. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For not treating me like I'm fragile. Everyone else does." Ethan shrugged. "You don't seem fragile to me." "Good," Arya said, "because I'm really, really tired of pretending to be." The third week, things shifted. It started with a text from Arya on a Thursday afternoon while Ethan was at work. Marcus posted something. "You should see it." Ethan pulled up Instagram, found Marcus Chen's verified account, and scrolled until he saw it. A photo of Arya from years ago, standing next to Marcus at some event, both of them smiling. The caption made Ethan's blood pressure spike. Throwback to when people were honest. Some relationships are real, some are PR stunts. You decide. The comments were brutal. Hundreds of people calling Arya fake, calling Ethan a paycheck, dissecting every photo of them with the kind of venom only anonymous strangers could muster. Ethan texted back, "He's escalating. I know. My lawyer says to ignore it. That's not going to work. What do you suggest?" Ethan stared at his phone, thinking. Marcus wanted a reaction, wanted them to crack under pressure. The smart move was to stay quiet. But Ethan had never been great at smart moves. "Post something real," he typed. "Not staged. Just us doing something normal." "Like what?" "I don't know. You're the influencer. Figure it out." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Are you free Saturday?" "Depends. Sophie's birthday is coming up, right?" Ethan's chest tightened. "How do you know that?" "You mentioned it." "At dinner." "She's turning 8 in 2 weeks." He had mentioned it. Barely. In passing. He hadn't expected her to remember. "Yeah," he typed. "Why?" "Let me take you guys shopping, for her party. We'll post a few photos. Show people this is real." "No, Sophie's not part of this. I'm not asking her to perform, just let me be there. As your girlfriend." Normal. Ethan wanted to say no. Every instinct told him to keep Sophie as far from this mess as possible. But the comments on Marcus's post kept scrolling through his head, and he thought about what Sophie had said in the car. "You're always alone, Daddy." One afternoon he typed, "That's it. And if she's uncomfortable, we leave." Deal. Saturday came too fast. Ethan spent the morning cleaning the apartment, changing clothes 3 times, and giving Sophie a speech about how Daddy's friend Arya was going to help them pick out decorations for her birthday party. "Is she your girlfriend?" Sophie asked, pulling on her sneakers. Ethan froze. "Why would you think that?" "Emma's mom showed me a picture on her phone." "Of course she did." Ethan crouched down to Sophie's eye level. "Arya's someone I'm spending time with. That's all." "Do you like her?" "I don't know yet." Sophie considered this. "Is she nice?" "I think so." "Okay." Sophie grabbed her coat. Can we get dinosaur balloons? We can get whatever you want, kiddo. They met Arya outside a party supply store in Lakeview. She was waiting on the sidewalk, hands shoved in the pockets of a puffy jacket, hair pulled back in a ponytail. No makeup, no performance, just a young woman who looked nervous as hell. Sophie stopped a few feet away, suddenly shy. Arya smiled, bent down slightly. Hi, you must be Sophie. Sophie nodded, stepped closer to Ethan. I'm Arya. Your dad's been telling me about your birthday party. Sounds like it's going to be awesome. We're getting dinosaur stuff, Sophie said quietly. Dinosaurs are the best. What's your favorite? Triceratops. That's a solid choice. 3 horns, total powerhouse. Sophie's face lit up. You know about dinosaurs? I know a little, mostly from books, but I'd love to hear more from an expert. Just like that, Sophie was hooked. She grabbed Arya's hand and dragged her toward the store entrance, chattering about herbivores and the Cretaceous period while Ethan followed behind, stunned. Inside, Arya let Sophie lead. Didn't try to take over or suggest better options. Just listened while Sophie debated balloon colors and whether they should get a piñata shaped like a T-Rex or a Stegosaurus. At one point, Arya pulled out her phone and snapped a photo of Sophie holding up a banner that read, "Roar, it's my birthday." Can I post this? Arya asked, showing Ethan the screen. He hesitated. The photo was innocent. Sophie's face wasn't fully visible, just her hands and the banner. It looked real, normal, exactly what they needed. Yeah, he said. Okay. Arya typed a caption, "Party planning with my favorite people." She hit post, and within minutes the comments started rolling in. But this time, they were different, softer. People gushing about how cute the photo was, how happy Arya looked, how nice it was to see her doing normal things. By the time they left the store, Sophie had a bag full of decorations, and Arya had a smile that didn't look fake at all. They grabbed lunch at a diner across the street, burgers and fries and milkshakes Sophie insisted they all try. Arya ordered strawberry, made a face at the first sip, and Sophie laughed so hard she snorted. It's not that funny, Arya protested, but she was laughing too. Ethan sat back and watched them, something unfamiliar settling in his chest. Not quite comfort, not quite fear, something in between. After lunch, Sophie convinced Arya to help her pick out a birthday outfit at a kids' clothing store 2 blocks down. Ethan hung back while they debated between a dinosaur t-shirt and a dress with sparkly sneakers. Both, Arya declared. You can wear the dress to the party and the shirt the next day. But that's a lot of money, Sophie said, glancing at Ethan. Arya knelt down, meeting Sophie's eyes. It's your birthday. You deserve to feel special. Sophie looked at Ethan for permission. He should have said no. Should have reminded her they didn't need handouts, but the hope on Sophie's face broke every rule he'd set. Okay, he said quietly. Sophie squealed, hugged Arya so hard they both almost fell over. At the register, Ethan tried to hand over his card. Arya pushed it away. This is my treat, she said firmly. Arya, Ethan, let me do this. He wanted to argue, wanted to protect what little pride he had left. But Sophie was beaming, and Arya looked genuinely happy, and he was so damn tired of fighting every small kindness people offered. Thank you, he said. Arya just smiled. They walked back to Ethan's car, Sophie skipping ahead with her bags. Arya hung back, matching Ethan's pace. She's wonderful, Arya said. Yeah, she is. You're lucky. Ethan glanced at her. So are you. Arya frowned. How do you figure? You get to be part of this, even if it's temporary. She didn't respond right away, just watched Sophie twirl on the sidewalk, arms spread wide like she could take off flying. I don't know how to do this, Arya said quietly. The normal stuff. I never learned. Neither did I, Ethan admitted. I just make it up as I go. Seems like you're doing okay. Most days I'm faking it, Arya laughed softly. Yeah, me too. They reached the car. Sophie climbed into the back seat, already digging through her bags. Arya lingered on the curb. Thanks for today, she said. I know you didn't want to involve her. She liked you, Ethan said. That doesn't happen often. Good taste runs in the family. He almost smiled. Almost. Arya's phone buzzed. She checked it, and her expression shifted. something between satisfaction and relief. "The post is blowing up," she said, turning the screen toward him. "In a good way." Ethan looked at the photo again. Sophie holding the banner. Arya crouched next to her, both of them grinning. It didn't look staged. It didn't look fake. It looked real. "Yeah," he said. "Good." Arya pocketed her phone, gave a small wave to Sophie through the window, then walked away before Ethan could say anything else. He sat in the driver's seat, hands on the wheel, and tried to ignore the uncomfortable truth settling in his gut. This wasn't just an arrangement anymore. That night, after Sophie went to bed, Ethan sat on the couch scrolling through the comments on Arya's post. Most of them were positive, sweet even. People saying they loved seeing Arya happy, that Ethan seemed like a good guy, that they were rooting for them. A few were still cruel, still called him a gold digger, or claimed Arya was faking for publicity, but those were drowned out by the majority. His phone buzzed. "Arya. Sophie's great. You're raising an amazing kid. Thanks. She liked you too. That's a relief. I was terrified I'd mess it up." "You didn't." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then reappeared. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. Do you think this is working? The whole fake dating thing?" Ethan stared at the message, unsure how to answer. Was it working? Publicly, maybe. People were buying it. Marcus had been quiet since the post went live. The narrative was shifting in their favor. But privately? Ethan had no idea what was happening anymore. "Yeah," he typed. "I think it's working." "Good. That's good." Another pause. "Ethan? Yeah? I'm glad it was you. In the ballroom that night, I don't think this would work with anyone else." He read the message 3 times, trying to figure out if she meant it or if this was just part of the performance. "Get some sleep," he typed back. "We've got 2 more months to get through." "Right. 2 more months." Ethan set his phone down, leaned back against the couch, and closed his eyes. 2 more months. He tried to believe that would be enough time to walk away clean, but somewhere deep down, he already knew better. The shift happened so gradually, Ethan didn't notice until it was too late to stop it. Arya started showing up more. Not just for staged photo opportunities or required public appearances, but for small things that didn't make sense unless she actually wanted to be there. She texted him articles about dinosaurs to share with Sophie. Dropped off coffee at the hotel during his late shifts with a note that just said, "Thought you could use this." Asked if she could come to Sophie's actual birthday party, not as part of the arrangement, but because she wanted to see Sophie blow out the candles. Ethan told himself it was all part of the performance, that Arya was just committed to selling the illusion. But when she showed up at his apartment on Sophie's birthday, carrying a wrapped present the size of a small refrigerator, he started to wonder if he was lying to himself. "What is that?" he asked, blocking the doorway. Arya grinned. "Open it and find out." "Arya, we talked about this. Nothing expensive." "It's not expensive. It's thoughtful. There's a difference." Sophie appeared behind Ethan, eyes wide. "Is that for me?" "Happy birthday," Arya said, crouching down to Sophie's level. "Want to open it now or wait until after cake?" "Now!" Sophie grabbed the present, dragged it into the living room, and tore through the wrapping paper with the kind of enthusiasm only 8-year-olds possessed. Inside was a dollhouse. Not the plastic kind from discount stores, but a handmade wooden structure with tiny furniture and hand-painted details. A miniature bedroom with books on shelves. A kitchen with actual pots and pans the size of Ethan's thumbnail. Even a little living room with a couch that looked suspiciously like the one in Ethan's apartment. Sophie gasped. "It's perfect," Arya smiled. "I made it. Well, most of it. Had some help with the wiring for the lights." "You made this?" Ethan stared at the dollhouse, then at Arya. "When?" "I've been working on it for a few weeks. Couldn't sleep, so I figured I'd do something useful." She shrugged like it was nothing, but Ethan could see the nervous energy in the way she twisted her bracelet. "Is it okay?" Sophie answered by throwing her arms around Arya's waist. "Thank you. Thank you, thank you." Arya hugged her back, and over Sophie's head her eyes met Ethan's. There was something vulnerable in her expression, like she was waiting for him to tell her she'd crossed a line. He should have. Should have reminded her this was temporary, that getting attached would only hurt everyone involved. But Sophie was beaming, and Arya looked genuinely happy, and Ethan was too tired to fight the warmth spreading through his chest. It's perfect, he said quietly. Arya's smile widened. The party was small, just Sophie's three closest friends from school, their parents, and Arya. They played games in the cramped living room, ate too much pizza, and destroyed a dinosaur-shaped cake Ethan had ordered from the bakery down the street. Arya fit in seamlessly, helping kids pin tails on paper dinosaurs and referencing them when arguments broke out over whose turn it was. One of the other parents, a woman named Rachel, cornered Ethan in the kitchen while he was refilling juice boxes. "So," Rachel said, lowering her voice, "that's her, the one from the photos." Ethan kept his expression neutral. "Yeah, that's Arya. She's not what I expected." "What did you expect?" Rachel glanced toward the living room where Arya was teaching Sophie's friend how to make a paper airplane. "I don't know, someone more polished? She seems normal." "She is normal." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "Is she? Because the internet says she's worth millions." Ethan grabbed the juice boxes, headed for the door. The internet says a lot of things. Later, after the guests left and Sophie crashed on the couch, surrounded by torn wrapping paper, Arya helped Ethan clean up. They worked in silence, bagging trash and stacking plates, until Arya spoke. "Rachel doesn't like me." "Rachel doesn't like anyone. She kept staring at me like I was going to steal the silverware." Ethan laughed despite himself. "We don't have silverware worth stealing." Arya smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She tied off a garbage bag, set it by the door. "Do you ever get tired of it? People judging you based on things that aren't true?" "Every single day." "How do you deal with it?" Ethan leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "I remind myself their opinions don't pay my bills or raise my kid. Then I move on." "That simple? That necessary?" Arya nodded slowly, picked at a piece of tape stuck to her thumb. "I wish I could do that. Just not care. You care too much about the wrong people." "Maybe." She looked up at him. "Or maybe I just don't know how to tell the difference anymore." They stood in the kitchen, the only sound Sophie's soft breathing from the couch. Ethan wanted to say something reassuring, something that would fix whatever was broken in Arya's ability to trust herself. But he wasn't good with words, never had been. So instead he just said, "Thank you, for the dollhouse. Sophie's going to play with that thing until it falls apart." "Good. That's what it's for." Arya grabbed her jacket, said goodbye to a half-asleep Sophie, and left before Ethan could offer to walk her out. He watched through the window as she climbed into her car, sat there for a long moment staring at nothing, then drove away. His phone buzzed an hour later. "Today was really nice. Thanks for letting me be part of it." Ethan typed back. "You were part of it because Sophie wanted you there, not because of the arrangement." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Does that scare you?" He stared at the message, unsure how to answer. Yeah, it scared him. Terrified him, actually. Because somewhere between the fake dates and the public photos and the birthday parties, lines had blurred. Arya wasn't just the woman paying him to pretend anymore. She was someone Sophie asked about. Someone who texted him random thoughts at midnight. Someone whose smile made his chest do stupid things he hadn't felt in years. "A little," he typed honestly. "Me too." "We've still got 6 weeks left." "I know. We should probably talk about what happens after." "Yeah, probably." But neither of them brought it up again. The scandal broke on a Tuesday. Ethan was at work, halfway through a shift, when his phone exploded with notifications. Texts from Dennis, from his supervisor, from numbers he didn't recognize. He pulled up Instagram and felt his stomach drop. Marcus Chen had posted a video. 3 minutes of him sitting in what looked like a home office, speaking directly to the camera with the kind of measured calm that made Ethan's skin crawl. "I've stayed quiet for weeks," Marcus said, "while Arya Vale has publicly humiliated me with lies about harassment and fake relationships designed to destroy my reputation. But I have proof, actual evidence that this entire thing is a setup." The video cut to screenshots, text messages between Arya and her manager discussing strategy, emails about payment structures, a contract, not the one Ethan had signed, but close enough that anyone watching would believe it was real. "Ethan Cole is being paid $50,000 to pretend to date Arya," Marcus continued. "This isn't a relationship. It's a business transaction designed to make me look like the bad guy, and I won't stand for it anymore." The video ended with Marcus staring into the camera, expression hard. The truth matters. And the truth is, Aria Vale is a liar. Ethan's hand shook as he scrolled through the comments. Thousands of them, most calling Aria a fraud, demanding she respond, tearing apart every photo they'd posted together, looking for proof it was staged. His phone rang. Aria, he answered. Did you see it? Yeah. Her voice was tight, barely controlled. My lawyer's working on a response. This is defamation. He fabricated those screenshots. Did he? Ethan interrupted. Silence. Aria. Did he make that up, or did he actually get access to something real? It's complicated. It's a yes or no question. More silence. Then quietly. Some of it's real, the contract, the payment, but he twisted it, made it look worse than it is. Ethan closed his eyes, pressed his palm against his forehead. How did he get it? I don't know. Someone on my team, maybe. Or he hacked my email. I don't know. You need to fix this. I'm trying. Try harder. Ethan's voice rose, and he forced himself to lower it. Do you have any idea what this does to me, to Sophie? I know, I'm sorry. I'll release a statement. A statement won't fix this. People already made up their minds. Then what do you want me to do? Ethan didn't have an answer. He hung up, turned off his phone, and tried to finish his shift without throwing something through a wall. By the time he got home, the story had spread to major news outlets. His name was everywhere. His photo, pulled from the hotel staff directory, plastered across gossip sites next to headlines like Gold Digger Exposed and Aria Vale's fake boyfriend scandal. Sophie was already in bed, but Ethan's neighbor, Mrs. Chen, met him in the hallway with a worried expression. There were reporters here earlier, she said, knocking on your door. I told them to leave, but I don't know if they'll come back. Thank you, Ethan managed. Is everything okay? With you and that girl? It's fine. Just a misunderstanding. Mrs. Chen didn't look convinced, but she nodded and retreated to her apartment. Ethan locked his door, checked on Sophie, still asleep, thankfully, and collapsed on the couch. His phone, turned back on, showed 63 missed calls. Texts from people he hadn't spoken to in years, all asking if the rumors were true. A voicemail from his supervisor requesting a meeting first thing tomorrow morning. Another voicemail from a reporter offering money for an exclusive interview. And one text from Aria. I'm coming over. Don't, he typed back. Reporters are outside. I don't care. Sophie's asleep. I'm not doing this tonight. Then when? I don't know. Just not now. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. No response. Ethan turned off his phone again, went to bed, and didn't sleep. The meeting with his supervisor went exactly as badly as Ethan expected. I'm not firing you, she said, which should have been reassuring but wasn't. But corporate is concerned about the optics. A staff member involved in a public scandal reflects poorly on the hotel's reputation. I didn't do anything wrong, Ethan said. I believe you, but perception matters. So here's what's going to happen. You're on administrative leave for 2 weeks while this blows over. Paid. When you come back, we'll reassess. Reassess what? Whether you can continue in a public-facing role. Ethan's jaw tightened. I've worked here for 6 years. I know, and I'm trying to protect you, but if this gets worse, I might not be able to. He left the office, went home, and found Sophie eating cereal at the kitchen table. Why aren't you at school? He asked. Mrs. Chen said I could stay home today because of the reporters. Ethan's chest tightened. Did they talk to you? No. Mrs. Chen yelled at them. Sophie swirled her spoon in the bowl. Daddy, why are people saying mean things about you? He sat down across from her, searched for an explanation that wouldn't scare her. Sometimes people get confused about what's true, and they say things that hurt. Is Aria your real girlfriend or a fake girlfriend? The question hit like a punch. It's complicated, kiddo. Emma's mom said you're lying to everyone. Emma's mom doesn't know what she's talking about. Sophie looked at him with those big, worried eyes. Are you in trouble? Ethan reached across the table, took her hand. No, I'm not in trouble. Everything's going to be okay. He didn't know if that was true, but he said it anyway, because that's what parents did. They lied to protect their kids from things they couldn't control. That afternoon, Aria showed up at his door. Ethan opened it, Saw her standing there in jeans and a hoodie, eyes red-rimmed, and nearly closed it again. "Please," she said, "just give me 5 minutes." He glanced back at Sophie, who was playing with her dollhouse in the living room. "Not here." They walked to the park 2 blocks away, sat on a bench facing the empty playground. It was cold, the kind of biting wind that made Ethan's eyes water. "I released a statement," Arya said. "Told the truth, that we started as an arrangement but became real." "Did we?" Ethan asked. She looked at him. "Didn't we?" He wanted to say no, wanted to draw a clean line between what they'd agreed to and what had actually happened. But he couldn't. "I don't know anymore," he admitted. Arya pulled her knees to her chest, wrapped her arms around them. "Marcus is suing me for defamation. My lawyer says if we can prove the relationship was real, that it wasn't just for show, we can fight it. But I need you to testify." "Testify?" "In a deposition. Maybe in court if it goes that far. You'd have to say under oath that we were really together." Ethan stared at the playground, at the swings swaying in the wind. "And if I don't? Then I lose everything, my career, my reputation, probably my company before it even launches. That's not my problem." "I know," Arya's voice cracked. "I know I don't have the right to ask, but I'm asking anyway." "You dragged my daughter into this," Ethan said quietly. "Reporters showed up at her school. Her friends' parents think I'm a con artist. Sophie asked me this morning if I was lying to everyone, and I didn't know how to answer." Arya wiped her eyes. "I'm sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix it." "Then what does?" Ethan turned to face her. "You walk away. Issue a statement saying the whole thing was fake from the start. Take the hit to your reputation and leave me and Sophie out of it." "I can't do that. Marcus will destroy me." "Then I guess you're stuck." Arya stood abruptly. "You think I wanted this? You think I planned for everything to blow up? I think you made a choice that night in the ballroom, and you didn't care who got hurt as long as you got what you needed. That's not fair." "None of this is fair." Ethan stood too, voice rising. "You paid me to play a part, and I did. But somewhere along the way, you made it real without asking if I wanted that. You got close to Sophie, showed up at her birthday, made her care about you. And now what? You're just going to disappear when this all falls apart?" "I don't want to disappear," Arya said, tears streaming down her face. "I want to stay." "Why? Because you like the idea of playing house? Because it makes you feel normal?" "Because I love you." The words hung in the air between them, sharp and raw and impossible to take back. Ethan stared at her, speechless. Arya covered her mouth with her hand like she could shove the confession back inside. "I didn't mean—" "Don't," Ethan said. "Don't take it back. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have—" "Do you mean it?" Arya looked at him, eyes wide and terrified. "Yes." Ethan felt something crack open in his chest. All the walls he'd built over the past 7 years, all the careful distance he'd maintained, all the rules about not letting anyone in, it all crumbled in the face of 3 words from a woman he'd convinced himself he didn't care about. "I don't know how to do this," he said. "Neither do I. Sophie comes first, always." "I know. If you hurt her, I will never forgive you." "I won't. I promise." Ethan stepped closer, close enough to see the mascara smudged under her eyes, the way her hands trembled. "This is a terrible idea." "Probably the worst," Arya agreed. He kissed her. It wasn't soft or romantic or anything like the movies. It was desperate and messy and tasted like salt from her tears. But it was real. The first real thing between them since the night they met. When they pulled apart, Arya was smiling through the tears. "So what now?" she asked. "Now we figure out how to make this work," Ethan said, "for real this time." "You'll testify?" "Yeah, I'll testify." Arya hugged him, buried her face in his chest. "Thank you." Ethan held her, feeling the weight of what they'd just committed to. This wasn't the arrangement anymore. This was something else entirely. Something that could either save them both or destroy whatever was left. "We should tell Sophie," Arya said quietly. "Tell her what?" "The truth. That we were pretending, but now we're not." Ethan pulled back, looked at her. "You think she'll understand?" "She's 8. She'll probably understand better than we do." He almost laughed. "Yeah, you're probably right. They walked back to the apartment hand in hand, and for the first time in weeks, Ethan felt like he could breathe. Sophie was exactly where they'd left her, rearranging furniture in the dollhouse. She looked up when they walked in, eyes moving from Ethan to Arya to their joined hands. "Are you guys fighting?" she asked. "No," Ethan said. "We're not fighting." "Then why do you look sad?" Arya sat down on the floor next to Sophie. "Can we talk to you about something?" Sophie nodded, suddenly serious. "You know how your dad and I have been spending time together?" Arya started. "Yeah. Well, at first it was kind of pretend, like playing a game, but then it became real, and now we're trying to figure out how to do it for real." Sophie frowned. "You were pretending to like Daddy?" "No," Arya said quickly. "I always liked him. I just didn't know it was okay to actually like him until later." Sophie processed this, her face scrunched in concentration. Then she looked at Ethan. "Do you like her for real?" Ethan crouched down to Sophie's level. "Yeah, kiddo, I do." "Good." Sophie turned back to her dollhouse. "Can Arya come over more now?" Ethan blinked. "That's it? That's all you want to know?" "Yeah." Sophie placed a tiny chair in the tiny living room. Emma's parents were pretend married for 2 years before they got real married. It's not that weird. Arya laughed, the sound bright and genuine. "You're a very smart kid." "I know," Sophie said matter-of-factly. Ethan caught Arya's eye, and she was smiling, really smiling, not the performance version. And for the first time since this whole mess started, Ethan let himself believe maybe, just maybe, this could actually work. The deposition was scheduled for the following week. Arya's lawyer prepped Ethan for hours, running through questions Marcus's legal team would ask, coaching him on how to answer without sounding rehearsed. "Just tell the truth," the lawyer said. "The relationship started as an arrangement, but it became real. That's not fraud. That's just life." "And if they ask about the money," Ethan said, "you accepted payment for a service that evolved into something genuine. People get paid for stranger things." The day of the deposition, Ethan wore the same button-down shirt from their first dinner. Arya met him outside the lawyer's office building, grabbed his hand. "You okay?" she asked. "Not even a little bit." She squeezed his hand. "Me neither." Inside, Marcus's lawyer was exactly what Ethan expected. Expensive suit, cold eyes, questions designed to make Ethan look like a con artist. They went after everything. His financial situation, his employment history, how quickly he'd agreed to the arrangement, whether he'd used Sophie to manipulate Arya's emotions. Ethan answered every question with the same steady honesty. Yes, he'd been paid. Yes, he'd agreed to pretend. But no, he hadn't lied about his feelings. And no, Sophie had never been part of any calculation. "So when did this arrangement become a real relationship?" the lawyer asked. Ethan thought about it. "I don't know the exact moment, but somewhere between the first dinner and Sophie's birthday, it stopped being fake." "How convenient." "It's the truth." The lawyer leaned back, smirking. "Mr. Cole, isn't it true that you've been unemployed for 2 weeks due to this scandal?" "I'm on paid leave." "And isn't it true that without Ms. Vale's financial support, you'd struggle to provide for your daughter?" Arya's lawyer objected, but the damage was done. The implication hung in the room, that Ethan was using Arya, that this was all about money, that nothing he said could be trusted. When the deposition ended, Ethan felt hollowed out. Arya met him in the hallway, took one look at his face, and pulled him into an empty conference room. "That was brutal," she said. "Yeah. But you did great." "Did I? Because I'm pretty sure I just handed them everything they need to paint me as a gold digger." "You told the truth. That's all we can do." Ethan sank into a chair. "What if it's not enough?" Arya knelt in front of him, took his hands. "Then we deal with it, together." "I don't know how to do this," Ethan said. "The public thing, the scrutiny, people ripping apart every word I say." "You think I do?" Arya smiled faintly. "I'm terrified every single day, but I show up anyway, because the alternative is letting people like Marcus win. I'm not like you. I don't have your strength. You have a different kind, the kind that raised a kid alone for 7 years, the kind that shows up for people even when it's hard. That's stronger than anything I've got." Ethan looked at her, this woman who'd crashed into his life and upended everything, and realized she was right. They were both terrified, both faking confidence they didn't feel, both just trying to survive the mess they'd made. "Okay," he said. "Together." Arya kissed him, soft and brief. Together. That night, the three of them ordered pizza and watched a movie on the couch. Sophie fell asleep halfway through, curled between Ethan and Arya. Ethan carried her to bed, tucked her in, and returned to find Arya still on the couch staring at her phone. "Marcus's team leaked the deposition transcript," she said quietly. "It's everywhere." Ethan sat down next to her, too exhausted to feel anything. "Of course they did. People are tearing you apart." "Let them." Arya looked at him. "You mean that? I'm done caring what strangers think. The people who matter know the truth." "Who are the people who matter?" "You, Sophie. That's it." Arya set her phone down, leaned into him. "I'm sorry this got so messy." "Life's messy. Doesn't mean it's not worth it." They sat in silence, the TV playing to an empty room, and Ethan realized something he hadn't expected. He wasn't scared anymore. Whatever came next, lawsuits, headlines, public judgment, they'd face it together. And that was enough. The fallout from the leaked deposition transcript was worse than Ethan anticipated. Within 48 hours, his face was everywhere. Not just gossip sites anymore, but legitimate news outlets running think pieces about authenticity in the age of social media. Morning talk shows debated whether paid relationships could ever become real. Twitter threads dissected every word he'd said under oath, looking for inconsistencies that proved he was lying. His phone never stopped buzzing. Reporters camped outside his apartment building. Someone tracked down his ex-girlfriend from college and got her to say he'd always been opportunistic, which wasn't true but made for a good headline. The hotel called 3 days into his leave and politely suggested he might want to consider other employment opportunities once this died down. Ethan stopped reading the articles, stopped checking social media, stopped answering calls from anyone except Arya and Sophie's school. But Sophie's school was its own nightmare. Principal Martinez called on a Friday afternoon, her voice tight with the kind of professionalism that barely masked frustration. "Mr. Cole, we need to talk about Sophie's situation." Ethan's stomach dropped. "What happened?" "Nothing serious, but several parents have expressed concerns about the media attention. Some reporters have been lingering near the pickup area, and it's making families uncomfortable." "I'll talk to them. Tell them to leave." "I appreciate that, but there's another issue." She paused. "Some children have been teasing Sophie about the things they've seen online regarding you and Ms. Vale." Ethan closed his eyes. "How bad is it?" "Bad enough that Sophie's teacher noticed. She's been withdrawing during recess, not participating in group activities." "I'll handle it." "I know you will. But, Mr. Cole, I need to be frank with you. If this continues, the reporters, the disruption, I may have to ask you to keep Sophie home until things settle down." "You're suspending her for something I did?" "I'm protecting the other students from a media circus they didn't sign up for." "I'm sorry. I truly am. But my hands are tied." Ethan hung up, sat on the couch, and tried to figure out how everything had gone so wrong so fast. That evening, he picked Sophie up early. She climbed into the car without a word, backpack dragging, eyes fixed on her lap. "Rough day?" Ethan asked gently. Sophie nodded. "You want to talk about it?" She shook her head. They drove home in silence. Inside the apartment, Sophie went straight to her room and closed the door. Ethan stood in the hallway, hand raised to knock, then thought better of it. Sometimes kids needed space. He'd learned that the hard way over the years. An hour later, Arya showed up with takeout and found Ethan sitting at the kitchen table staring at nothing. "Sophie's school called," he said without looking up. Arya set the food down. "What did they say?" "Kids are teasing her. Parents are complaining. They might send her home if it doesn't stop." "That's not fair. She didn't do anything wrong." "Doesn't matter. She's suffering because of choices we made." Arya pulled out a chair, sat across from him. "We can fix this." "How? By making it all go away?" "That's not how the internet works." "No, but I can control the narrative, do an interview, tell our story the right way." Ethan looked at her. "An interview won't stop kids from being cruel. Maybe not, but it might stop their parents from feeding them garbage to repeat. Or it'll make everything worse." "Possibly." Arya reached across the table, took his hand, but doing nothing definitely won't help. Ethan wanted to argue, wanted to say that more exposure was the last thing they needed, but Sophie was hiding in her room, and he was out of better ideas. "What kind of interview?" he asked. "Live. National morning show, both of us. We tell the whole truth, the arrangement, the money, how it became real. No spin, no PR tricks, just honesty. That's career suicide for you. My career's already dying, at least this way I control how it happens." Ethan studied her face, looking for cracks in the resolve. But she meant it. She was willing to burn everything down if it meant protecting Sophie. "Okay," he said. "Set it up." The interview was scheduled for the following Wednesday. Arya's team spent 3 days prepping them. Mock questions, media training, wardrobe consultation. Ethan hated every second of it. The hair and makeup people fussing over him. The producer telling him to smile more naturally, like that was something you could just turn on. The night before, Ethan couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through worst-case scenarios. What if he froze on camera? What if he said something that made everything worse? What if Marcus's lawyers used the interview against them? His phone buzzed. "Arya, you awake?" "Yeah." "Me too. Want to come over?" Ethan glanced at Sophie's room. She was spending the night at a friend's house, one of the few parents who didn't treat Ethan like a pariah. He grabbed his keys. Arya answered her door in sweatpants and an oversized t-shirt, hair pulled into a messy bun. No makeup, no performance. Just her. "Can't stop thinking about tomorrow," she said, stepping aside to let him in. "Same." They sat on her couch, a documentary playing on mute in the background. Arya pulled a blanket over both of them, leaned into Ethan's side. "What if I mess it up?" she asked quietly. "You won't." "You don't know that." "Yeah, I do. You've been performing your whole life. This is just another show. Except it's not. This is real. And I'm terrified of real." Ethan wrapped his arm around her. "Me too." They sat like that for a long time, finding comfort in shared fear. Eventually, Arya fell asleep against his shoulder. Ethan stayed awake, watching the silent documentary flicker across the screen, and tried to convince himself everything would be okay. The morning show taping happened in a downtown studio with too many lights and too many people wearing headsets. Ethan and Arya sat on a couch across from the host, a woman in her 40s with the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We're live in 30 seconds, someone called. Arya squeezed Ethan's hand. He squeezed back. The interview started soft. Basic questions about how they met, what drew them together, when they knew it was serious. Ethan let Arya take the lead, only jumping in when the host directed questions at him. Then the host shifted gears. "Let's address the elephant in the room," she said, leaning forward slightly. "Marcus Chen has accused you both of fabricating this relationship. He's provided what appears to be evidence of a contract, payment records. How do you respond to that?" Arya didn't hesitate. "It's true. At first this was an arrangement. Ethan agreed to pose as my boyfriend to help me get away from a toxic situation with Marcus. I paid him for that." The host's eyebrows rose. "You're admitting the relationship was fake?" "Was," Arya emphasized. "It started as something transactional, but it became real." "When?" "I don't know the exact moment, but somewhere between pretending and actually spending time together, the line disappeared." The host turned to Ethan. "And you expect people to believe that? That you went from being paid to pretend to genuinely falling for her?" Ethan met her gaze. "I don't expect people to believe anything, but it's the truth. Isn't it convenient that this transformation happened right when the relationship was being questioned?" "There's nothing convenient about any of this," Ethan said, voice steady. "My daughter's being bullied at school. I'm out of a job. Strangers are calling me a con artist. If I was doing this for money or fame, I picked the worst possible strategy." "So why do it at all?" Ethan glanced at Arya, then back at the host. "Because sometimes you meet someone who changes everything, and you have to decide if you're brave enough to let them." The host paused, clearly not expecting that answer. She shifted to Arya. "What about the harassment allegations against Marcus Chen? Were those fabricated too?" "No," Arya said firmly. "Marcus refused to accept our breakup. He showed up at events uninvited, sent inappropriate messages, threatened my career when I wouldn't get back together with him. Asking Ethan to pretend to be my boyfriend was a desperate move, but the harassment was real. Marcus denies all of this. Of course he does. Men like Marcus don't think they're doing anything wrong. They think persistence is romantic, that ownership is love. That's a serious accusation. It's a serious problem. The interview continued for another 10 minutes. Questions about Sophie, about Arya's career, about what happened next. But the damage was done. Ethan could see it in the host's expression, in the way the camera operators exchanged glances. They just handed their critics everything they needed to tear them apart. When they walked off set, Arya's phone was already blowing up. Her manager called immediately. "What the hell were you thinking?" The voice on speakerphone was sharp. "You just admitted to paying him. Do you know what this does to your credibility?" "I told the truth," Arya said calmly. "The truth is career suicide." "Then I guess I'm dead." She hung up. Ethan stared at her. "You okay?" "Not even a little bit." But she was smiling. "But I'm free. For the first time in years, I'm actually free." The response to the interview was exactly as polarizing as Ethan expected. Half the internet praised Arya for her honesty, calling her brave for admitting the truth. The other half eviscerated her, claiming she'd just confirmed every suspicion Marcus had raised. Ethan's mentions were even worse. People calling him a manipulator, a user, a deadbeat dad exploiting his daughter for sympathy. Someone started a petition demanding he lose custody of Sophie. It got 15,000 signatures in 6 hours. But buried in the vitriol were other voices. Smaller, quieter, but there. People sharing their own stories of fake relationships that became real. Single parents talking about the impossible choices poverty forced them into. Survivors of harassment recognizing themselves in Arya's description of Marcus. 3 days after the interview aired, Marcus's lawsuit collapsed. Not because of anything Arya or Ethan did, but because someone else came forward. A woman named Jessica, Marcus's assistant from 2 years ago, released a statement detailing her own experience with his harassment. Then another woman. Then 3 more. Within a week, Marcus was facing multiple lawsuits of his own. His company's board forced him to step down. Major investors pulled out. And suddenly, the narrative shifted. Arya wasn't the liar. Marcus was the predator. Ethan watched it unfold from Arya's apartment, Sophie playing with her dollhouse on the floor while cable news dissected Marcus's downfall. "Do you feel vindicated?" Ethan asked. Arya shook her head. "I feel sad for those women, for the years they stayed silent because they thought no one would believe them." "You gave them permission to speak." "I gave them a platform, but they gave themselves permission." She turned off the TV. "I don't want to watch this anymore." Sophie looked up from her dollhouse. "Can we make dinner?" "What do you want?" Arya asked. "Pancakes." "For dinner?" "Why not?" Arya laughed. "You know what? Why not?" They made pancakes together in Arya's tiny kitchen, Sophie insisting on pouring the batter herself, Ethan trying to flip them without making a mess, Arya burning the first batch while everyone laughed. It was chaotic and imperfect and absolutely nothing like the life Arya used to post about online. It was real. Later, after Sophie fell asleep on the couch, and Ethan carried her to Arya's guest room, he found Arya standing on her balcony staring at the city lights. "You okay?" he asked, stepping outside. "My manager quit today," she said. "Said I'd destroyed my brand beyond repair." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. She was right. The old brand is dead." Arya turned to face him. "But maybe that's okay. Maybe I can build something new, something that actually matters." "Like what?" "I don't know yet, but I have some ideas." She paused. "I've been thinking about starting a nonprofit for people dealing with harassment, legal resources, counseling, safety planning, all the stuff I wish I'd had when I was dealing with Marcus." Ethan smiled. "That's a good idea. You think I can pull it off?" "Yeah, I do." Arya stepped closer, wrapped her arms around his waist. "What about you? What's next?" "I got a call from a security firm downtown. One of the guys who used to work with me put in a good word. They want to interview me for a supervisor position." "That's great. It's more money, better hours, actual benefits." He hesitated. "But it means starting over, proving myself all over again." "You'll be great at it." "How do you know?" Because you're great at everything that actually matters. They stood together on the balcony, the cold wind cutting through their clothes, and Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in years: hope. Not the desperate, fragile kind that shattered at the first sign of trouble, but something solid, earned. "I love you," he said. Arya looked up at him, eyes wide. "You've never said that before." "I know, I was scared." "And now?" "Still scared, but saying it anyway." She kissed him, soft and slow and full of everything words couldn't capture. When they pulled apart, she was crying. "I love you too," she whispered. "Both of you." The hotel called a week later, offering Ethan his job back with a promotion and a formal apology from corporate. He turned it down. The security firm offered him the supervisor position at nearly double his previous salary. He accepted. Arya launched her nonprofit with seed funding from investors who believed in the mission more than the controversy. She stepped back from social media, posting only occasionally about the organization's work. Her follower count dropped by half, but the people who stayed were there for the right reasons. Sophie went back to school after a 2-week break. The teasing didn't stop completely, but it faded. Kids moved on to the next drama, the next scandal. Sophie made a new friend, a girl named Maya, whose parents were going through a messy divorce and didn't judge anyone else's family situation. Things weren't perfect. Arya still had nightmares about Marcus. Ethan still struggled with the paranoia that strangers were photographing him. Sophie still asked hard questions neither of them knew how to answer, but they figured it out. Together. One Saturday morning, Ethan woke up in Arya's bed to the smell of burning toast. He stumbled into the kitchen and found Sophie and Arya attempting breakfast, smoke billowing from the toaster. "We're making you breakfast in bed," Sophie announced proudly. "I can see that," Ethan said, trying not to laugh. "It's going great," Arya added, waving a dish towel at the smoke detector. Ethan grabbed the towel from her, opened a window, and reset the alarm. "How about I help?" "That defeats the purpose," Sophie protested. "The purpose is to not burn down the apartment." They made breakfast together: slightly charred toast, scrambled eggs that were a bit runny, orange juice poured into 3 mismatched glasses. They ate at the table in Arya's dining nook, sunlight streaming through the window, and Ethan realized this was what happiness looked like. Not perfect, not polished, just real. "I have something to tell you guys," Arya said, setting down her fork. Ethan and Sophie both looked at her. "I found a space for the nonprofit. It's small, but it's in a good location. We can start seeing clients next month." "That's amazing," Ethan said. "There's more." Arya took a breath. "I want to hire you." Ethan blinked. "What?" "As head of security, for the office, and for clients who need protection. You'd be perfect for it." "Arya, I just accepted the other job." "I know. But think about it. This would be flexible hours. You'd be helping people who really need it, and we'd be working together." "Working together sounds like a terrible idea." "Probably," Arya agreed. "But when has that stopped us?" Sophie looked between them. "I think you should do it, Daddy." "Of course you do," Ethan muttered. "It means you'd be home more. And you'd be helping people like Arya who were scared, out of the mouths of 8-year-olds. Ethan looked at Arya, saw the hope in her eyes, and knew he was going to say yes, even though every logical part of his brain screamed that mixing work and personal life was asking for disaster. "Let me think about it," he said. "Take your time," Arya replied, but she was smiling like she already knew his answer. That afternoon, they went to the park, the same one where Ethan and Arya had their fight weeks ago. Sophie ran ahead to the playground while Ethan and Arya walked slowly behind. "You don't have to take the job," Arya said. "I shouldn't have put you on the spot like that." "You didn't, Sophie did," Arya laughed. "She's getting good at that." They sat on a bench watching Sophie climb the jungle gym with fearless determination. "I meant what I said," Arya continued, "about wanting to work with you, but only if it feels right. I don't want to mess up what we have." "What do we have?" Ethan asked. Arya thought about it. "Something real. Something that doesn't fit into any box people try to put it in." "That's a pretty vague answer." "It's the best I've got." Ethan took her hand. "I'll think about the job. Seriously, but whatever I decide, it won't change this." "Promise?" "Yeah, I promise." Sophie ran back over, out of breath and grinning. "Can we get ice cream?" It's barely noon, Ethan said. So? So you just had breakfast. That was like an hour ago. Arya stood, pulled Ethan to his feet. Come on, let's get ice cream. You're terrible influences on each other, Ethan said, but he was already walking toward the ice cream truck parked near the playground entrance. They got 3 cones, chocolate for Sophie, vanilla for Arya, cookies and cream for Ethan, and sat on the grass eating them while Sophie narrated an elaborate story about a dinosaur who ate ice cream and gained superpowers. Ethan's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. This is Marcus, we need to talk. He stared at it, feeling the old anxiety spike in his chest. Arya noticed his expression. What's wrong? He showed her the message. Her face hardened. Don't respond. He's desperate, grasping at anything to stay relevant. What if he tries something? Then we deal with it, together. She squeezed his hand. He doesn't get to control us anymore. Ethan deleted the message, blocked the number, and turned his attention back to Sophie's story. Marcus Chen was the past. This, ice cream on a sunny afternoon with 2 people he loved, this was the present. And for the first time in 7 years, Ethan let himself believe the future might actually be worth looking forward to. That night, after dropping Sophie back at the apartment and getting her settled for bed, Ethan sat on the edge of her mattress while she clutched her stuffed rabbit. Did you have fun today? He asked. Yeah, Arya's nice. She is. Sophie was quiet for a moment. Then, are you going to marry her? Ethan's breath caught. I don't know, kiddo. We're still figuring things out. But you love her. Yeah, I do. And she loves us. Yeah. Sophie nodded, satisfied. Okay, that's all that matters. She closed her eyes, already half asleep. Ethan kissed her forehead, turned off the light, and stood in the doorway watching her breathe. When had she gotten so wise? His phone buzzed again. This time it was Arya. Thank you for today, for everything. You don't have to thank me. I want to. You and Sophie saved my life. Pretty sure it was the other way around. Maybe we saved each other. Ethan smiled at the screen. Yeah, maybe we did. He turned off his phone, climbed into his own bed, and for the first time in months, fell asleep without worrying about what tomorrow would bring. 6 months later, Ethan stood in the small office space Arya had rented for the nonprofit and tried to figure out why the security camera system kept glitching. He'd been the head of security for 3 months now, and most days felt like he was making it up as he went. But the work mattered in a way his old hotel job never had. Every person who walked through those doors was running from something. Abusive partners, stalkers, employers who thought power meant ownership. Ethan made sure they felt safe while they figured out their next move. Did you fix it? Arya called from her office down the hall. Working on it, Ethan called back, adjusting a wire that looked loose. The camera flickered to life. He tested the feed on his phone, satisfied when the image came through clear. Arya appeared in the doorway, holding 2 coffee cups. You're a miracle worker. It was a loose connection. Hardly a miracle. Still counts. She handed him a cup, leaned against the doorframe. We have 3 new clients coming in this afternoon. One of them specifically asked for you to do the security assessment. Why me? Because you don't talk down to people. You just listen and figure out what they need. Ethan sipped his coffee, uncomfortable with the praise. He'd spent most of his life being invisible, doing his job without recognition. This, being seen, being valued for more than just clocking in and out, still felt strange. Sophie's school called, Arya said, switching topics. They want to know if we can both come to the parent-teacher conference next week. Both of us? Yeah. Apparently she's been telling everyone I'm her stepmom. Ethan's chest tightened. I'll talk to her. Why? It doesn't bother me. Because it's not true. Arya's expression shifted, something between hurt and understanding. Not yet, anyway. She left before Ethan could respond, disappearing back into her office. He stood there holding his coffee, feeling like he'd just failed a test he didn't know he was taking. The truth was, he and Arya had been dancing around the future for months. They were together, clearly. She spent more nights at his apartment than her own. Sophie called her by name but introduced her as family. They'd built something real and solid and terrifying in its permanence, but neither of them had said the words that would make it official. Neither had asked what came next. That evening, Ethan picked Sophie up from school and found her unusually quiet in the back seat. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Maya asked if Arya is going to be my new mom," Sophie said. Ethan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "What did you say?" "I said I don't know. Is she?" "That's complicated, kiddo." "Why?" "You love her. She loves us." "What's complicated?" Out of the mouths of 8-year-olds, again. "It's not that simple," Ethan tried. "Yes, it is. Grown-ups just make it hard." She wasn't wrong. Ethan had spent 6 months overthinking every step, every decision, terrified of moving too fast or not fast enough. Meanwhile, Sophie had already figured out what she wanted. What they all wanted, if anyone had the courage to say it out loud. That night, after Sophie went to bed, Ethan called Arya. "Can you come over?" he asked. "Now?" "Yeah." "Is everything okay?" "I don't know, but I need to talk to you." She arrived 20 minutes later, still in the jeans and sweater she'd worn to work. Ethan led her to the couch, suddenly unsure how to start. "You're freaking me out," Arya said. "Sorry, I'm not good at this." "At what?" Ethan took a breath. "Sophie's been telling people you're her stepmom." Arya's face went carefully neutral. "I know, the school mentioned it. And that doesn't bother you." "Should it?" "I don't know. We've never talked about what this is. Long term." Arya studied him. "What do you want it to be?" "I want you here. Permanently. I want Sophie to stop wondering if you're going to leave. I want to stop being terrified that one day you'll wake up and realize you can do better." "Better than what?" "Than a single dad with baggage and a kid who asks impossible questions." Arya moved closer, took his hands. "Ethan, you're not baggage. And Sophie's not impossible. You're both the best thing that's ever happened to me." "You say that now." "Now, I'll say it forever if you let me." The words hung between them, heavy with implication. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" Ethan asked. "I'm saying I want this. All of it. The good days and the hard ones. The boring mornings and the messy evenings. I want to be Sophie's stepmom, if she'll have me. And I want to be your wife, if you'll have me." Ethan stared at her. "Did you just propose?" "I think I did." Arya laughed, shaky and breathless. "Is that okay? I was supposed to ask you." "Says who?" "I don't know. Society? Society also said we'd never work. And look at us." Ethan pulled her closer, kissed her hard. "Yes." "Yes?" "Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I want forever. Yes to all of it." Arya kissed him back, tears streaming down her face. When they pulled apart, she was smiling so wide it looked like it hurt. "We should tell Sophie," she said. "Now? Why wait?" They went to Sophie's room together, found her still awake reading by flashlight under her blanket. "You're supposed to be asleep," Ethan said. Sophie looked up, saw both of them standing there, and immediately sat up. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," Arya said quickly. "We just wanted to talk to you about something." Sophie set her book aside, suddenly serious. "Okay." Ethan sat on the edge of her bed, Arya beside him. "Arya and I have been talking about the future, about what our family looks like." "And?" Sophie prompted. "And we want to know how you'd feel if Arya became part of our family, officially." Sophie's eyes went wide. "Like married?" "Yeah, like married." "Are you asking my permission?" Ethan smiled. "Kind of." Sophie thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. "Okay, yes. Can I be in the wedding?" Arya laughed, the sound bright and genuine. "You can be whatever you want to be." "I want to be a flower girl, but with dinosaurs instead of flowers." "We can make that happen," Ethan said. Sophie hugged them both, her small arms barely reaching around them. "This is the best day ever." After they tucked her back in, for real this time, Ethan and Arya stood in the hallway, holding hands like teenagers. "That went better than expected," Arya whispered. "She's been waiting for us to figure it out. Smart kid. Gets it from her mom." Arya's expression softened. "I'm not trying to replace her." "I know, and Sophie knows too, but you're her mom in all the ways that matter." They went back to the living room, collapsed on the couch, and Arya pulled out her phone. "Should we tell people?" she asked. Ethan groaned. "Do we have to?" "We don't have to do anything, But if we don't, someone will spot a ring eventually, and the speculation will be worse than just announcing it. I haven't bought you a ring yet. I don't need one. Yes, you do. Even I know that. Arya smiled. Okay, then we'll wait until you get one, and then we'll tell people. On our terms. Ethan liked that plan, liked the idea of controlling the narrative for once, instead of letting the internet decide what their story meant. 2 weeks later, Ethan took Sophie ring shopping. They went to a small jewelry store in a neighborhood where no one would recognize them, and Sophie took the task extremely seriously. It has to be perfect, she declared, peering into a display case. I'm aware, Ethan said. The jeweler, an older woman with kind eyes, smiled at them. What are we looking for today? An engagement ring, Sophie announced, for my almost stepmom. Congratulations. Do you know her style? Ethan pulled out his phone, showed her a photo of Arya. She doesn't wear a lot of jewelry, keeps things simple. The jeweler studied the photo, then pulled out a tray of rings. These might work, classic designs, nothing too flashy. Sophie pointed immediately to a silver band with a small diamond. That one. You sure? Ethan asked. Look at it, Daddy. It's perfect. The jeweler held it up to the light. Your daughter has good taste. This is one of our most popular styles. Elegant, but understated. Ethan looked at the price tag and winced. It was more than he'd planned to spend, but not impossible. He'd been saving the last of Arya's original payment for something important. This qualified. We'll take it, he said. Sophie beamed. That evening, Ethan hid the ring in his sock drawer, the most cliché hiding spot in history, but Sophie swore she wouldn't tell. He'd planned to wait, to find the perfect moment, but 3 days later the moment found him instead. They were at Arya's apartment making dinner together. Sophie was setting the table, Arya was stirring pasta sauce, and Ethan was cutting vegetables with the focus of someone who'd watched too many cooking shows. It was ordinary, domestic, perfect in its imperfection. I've been thinking, Arya said, tasting the sauce. We should take a trip, the three of us, somewhere Sophie's never been. Where? Sophie asked, materializing next to Arya. I don't know. Where do you want to go? Disney World, Arya laughed. Okay, Disney World it is. Really? Sophie's eyes went wide. Really? We'll plan it for next month, after the nonprofit's fundraiser. Sophie shrieked, jumped up and down, then ran to her backpack to start making lists of rides she wanted to go on. Ethan watched Arya move around the kitchen with easy confidence, humming along to the music playing from her phone. She'd changed so much from the woman he'd met in that ballroom. The performance was gone. The desperation to be perfect had faded. She burned dinner sometimes, forgot to post on social media for weeks, showed up to work in sweatpants when she was too tired to care. She was real, fully, completely real, and Ethan couldn't wait another second. Arya, he said. She turned, wooden spoon in hand. Yeah? He pulled the ring box from his pocket, dropped to one knee right there in the kitchen. Arya's mouth fell open. The spoon clattered to the floor. I was going to plan this better, Ethan said. Find some romantic spot. Write a speech. But standing here watching you promise my daughter a trip to Disney World, I realized I don't want to wait. I don't need perfect. I just need you. Ethan, you asked me 6 months ago to marry you, and I said yes. But I want to ask you too. I want you to know that this isn't just me accepting what you offered. I'm choosing you, choosing us, every single day. He opened the box. So, Arya Vale, will you marry me? Arya was crying before he finished. She dropped to her knees in front of him, nodded frantically. Yes, of course, yes. He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Sophie appeared in the doorway, phone in hand. I got a video. You were recording? Ethan asked. Duh, this is important. Arya laughed through the tears, pulled Sophie into the hug. They stayed there on the kitchen floor, tangled together, while the pasta sauce bubbled over on the stove and neither of them cared. Later, after they'd salvaged dinner and Sophie had finally gone to bed, Arya posted the video Sophie had taken. No caption, just the raw footage of Ethan proposing and her saying yes. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of comments, most of them supportive. People who'd followed their story from the beginning celebrating with them. A few critics still called it staged, but they were drowned out by the majority. Marcus Chen didn't comment. Didn't respond at all. He'd gone quiet after his own scandals exploded, and Ethan hoped he'd stay that way. The wedding happened 3 months later on the rooftop of the hotel where they'd first met. Arya's idea. She wanted to reclaim the space, turn the memory of that desperate night into something beautiful. It was small, just 50 people. Sophie's friends from school, co-workers from the nonprofit, Dennis from Ethan's old job, a few of Arya's industry contacts who'd stuck by her through everything. No reporters, no cameras except the photographer they'd hired. Sophie walked down the aisle scattering plastic dinosaurs instead of flowers, exactly as requested. Arya wore a simple white dress she'd designed herself. Ethan wore a suit that actually fit, bought specifically for this day. They wrote their own vows. Arya went first. "I used to think love meant performance," she said, voice shaking slightly, "that if I could just be perfect enough, someone would finally see me. But you saw me when I was a mess, when I was desperate and scared and making terrible decisions, and you stayed anyway. You taught me that real love isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up honestly, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. I promise to keep showing up, to keep being real, to keep choosing you and Sophie every single day." Ethan pulled out his own handwritten notes, hands trembling. "I spent 7 years building walls," he read, "convincing myself that keeping people out was the same as keeping Sophie safe. And then you crashed into my life and broke every rule I'd made. You were supposed to be temporary, a transaction. 3 months and done. But you became so much more. You became the person who makes Sophie laugh, who burns pancakes and doesn't care, who turned her pain into purpose and showed me it's okay to let people in. I promise to protect you, to support your dreams, and to never take for granted the fact that you chose us." There wasn't a dry eye on that rooftop. The reception was exactly what they'd wanted. Simple food, good music, people they actually cared about. Sophie danced with Arya to a song about adventure. Ethan's old supervisor gave a surprisingly heartfelt toast about second chances, and when the night wound down and most guests had left, the three of them stood at the edge of the rooftop looking out at the city lights. "We did it," Arya said softly. "Did what?" Ethan asked. "Made it real." Sophie, half asleep between them, mumbled something about dinosaurs. Ethan picked her up, and she draped herself over his shoulder like a sleepy rag doll. "You want to know something?" Arya said. "What?" "A year ago, I was standing in a ballroom downstairs, terrified Marcus was going to destroy me, and I grabbed the first person I saw and lied to save myself." She looked at Ethan. "I had no idea that lie would become the most honest thing I'd ever done." Ethan shifted Sophie's weight, reached for Arya's hand. "I used to think surviving meant keeping your head down, not making waves, protecting what little you had. And now? Now I think surviving means taking risks on the right people, even when it scares you." They stood there as the city hummed below them, three people who'd found each other in the messiest possible way and somehow made it work. Not because they were perfect, not because the path had been easy, but because they'd chosen each other over and over, even when it would have been simpler to walk away. 6 months after the wedding, the nonprofit expanded to 3 locations. Arya hired 4 more staff members and started a speaker series where survivors shared their stories. Ethan developed a training program for security professionals on trauma-informed protection. Sophie started 3rd grade and announced she wanted to be a paleontologist when she grew up. Life wasn't perfect. Arya still had nightmares sometimes. Ethan still struggled with the instinct to retreat when things got hard. Sophie still asked questions neither of them knew how to answer, but they figured it out together, one imperfect day at a time. One evening, almost a year to the day after that night in the ballroom, Ethan found Arya sitting on their couch scrolling through old photos on her phone. "What are you looking at?" he asked, sitting beside her. "Remember this?" She showed him the photo from their first staged date, both of them at the Italian restaurant, her hand on his, looking like they were sharing secrets. "Yeah, that feels like a lifetime ago." In a way it was. We're completely different people now. Better people? Happier people, Arya said. "That's what matters." Sophie emerged from her room carrying a school project. "Can you guys help me with this?" It was a family tree assignment. She'd already filled in most of it. Her name at the bottom, Ethan on one side, Arya on the other. At the top, she'd drawn a branch for her biological mother with careful, neat letters. "Is this okay?" Sophie asked. "The teacher said we could design it however we want." Ethan looked at the tree, at the way Sophie had included everyone who mattered, and felt something unlock in his chest. "It's perfect," he said. They spent the next hour helping Sophie decorate the project, gluing photos and drawing branches, telling stories about the people in her family tree. Arya talked about her own parents, complicated relationships she was still trying to understand. Ethan shared memories of Sophie's mother, keeping her alive in the way she deserved. After Sophie went to bed, Ethan and Arya cleaned up the craft supplies scattered across the table. "You ever think about how different things could have been?" Arya asked. "How do you mean?" "If you'd walked away that night. If I'd picked someone else. If any of 100 things had gone differently." Ethan thought about it. "Yeah, sometimes, but then I remember that every choice led here. And I can't regret that. Even the hard parts? Especially the hard parts. They taught us how to fight for this." Arya wrapped her arms around his waist, rested her head against his chest. "I love you. I love you too." They stood in their kitchen, holding each other in the quiet, and Ethan thought about the man he'd been a year ago, tired, isolated, convinced that keeping people at a distance was the same as keeping them safe. He'd been wrong. Safety didn't come from walls. It came from finding people brave enough to see past your defenses and stay anyway. The internet had moved on to other scandals, other stories. Marcus Chen's name barely appeared in searches anymore. The articles about Ethan and Arya's fake relationship were buried under hundreds of newer headlines. But the three of them remained, not as a cautionary tale or a viral sensation, but as a family. That's the thing about real life. It doesn't end with credits rolling or a final page turning. It keeps going. Messy and imperfect and beautiful in its refusal to be anything other than what it is. Ethan learned that love isn't something that happens to you. It's something you choose every day in 1,000 small ways. Making coffee for someone who's running late, listening when they're scared, showing up when it's easier to leave, building a life together not because it's perfect, but because it's worth fighting for. Arya learned that strength isn't pretending to be unbreakable. It's letting people see the cracks and trusting them not to shatter you further. It's using your pain to help others, turning your worst moments into purpose. And Sophie, caught between childhood and the person she'd become, learned that families come in all shapes, that love isn't about biology or perfection. It's about showing up, about people who choose to stay. Years later, when people asked how they met, Ethan and Arya would laugh and say it was complicated, which was true. But the simple version was this: two broken people crashed into each other at exactly the right moment and decided to heal together. Not a fairy tale, not a perfect romance, just real life with all its sharp edges and unexpected grace. And that, Ethan realized, was more than enough. The city lights glowed through the window as Ethan turned off the kitchen light and joined Arya in bed. She was already half asleep, but she reached for his hand in the dark. "Hey," she mumbled. "Hey. Thank you." "For what?" "For saying yes, that night in the hallway. You could have walked away." "So could you." "But we didn't." "No," Ethan agreed, pulling her closer. "We didn't." And in the quiet of their shared space, surrounded by the evidence of the life they'd built, Sophie's drawings on the fridge, Arya's designs scattered across the desk, work schedules and school permission slips and all the ordinary debris of living, Ethan finally understood what home meant. It wasn't a place. It was this: the people you chose and who chose you back. The messy, imperfect, absolutely irreplaceable truth of being seen and loved anyway. The most unexpected people sometimes become the family you were missing all along.